The stars around the Battlestar Galactica were cold and silent. The ship moved slowly, carrying what was left of humanity. Once, the 12 colonies had been full of life, sound, and light. Now they were gone. Only memories remained, drifting with the fleet through empty space. The fleet followed Galactica like lost children following a tired parent. Old cargo ships, damaged liners, fuel tankers held together by hope and thin metal plates, all of them depended on the Battlestar. Inside those ships were families, workers, pilots, and children who no longer asked when they would go home. Home was gone. Commander Robert Hayes stood on the command deck, looking at the wide screen of stars. His uniform was clean, but his face showed long nights without sleep. He had learned to hide fear not because he did not feel it, but because others looked to him. When he spoke calmly, others believed they could survive one more day. Supplies were low. Fuel had to be counted carefully. Food was measured, not eaten freely. Water was reused again and again. Every choice mattered. A wrong turn could cost lives. Still, Hayes kept the fleet moving. Far beyond human sensors, alien observers watched in silence. Their ships did not shine or leave trails. They floated like shadows between dimensions. These beings did not see humans as equals. To them, humans were a simple species, emotional, fragile, driven by fear. The observers had studied many civilizations. They believed they understood collapse. When pressure grew, species turned on each other. When hope faded, order failed. Humans, they decided, were no different. They watched the fleet drift and recorded every movement. Slow speed, damaged hulls, broken command structure. In their records, the future was clear. Humans would break soon. Inside Galactica, life went on in small, quiet ways. In a dim corridor, an engineer named Mark Lewis worked with shaking hands. A power relay had failed again. He had fixed it twice already, using parts that should not fit. Each time, the system came back online for a few hours. That was enough. He wiped sweat from his face and smiled when the lights stayed on. Down in the medical bay, Hannah Brown moved from bed to bed. She spoke softly to the injured even when she had no medicine left to give. Sometimes words were all she had. She held hands. She listened. She remembered names. On the command deck, Hayes listened to reports. Another ship needed repairs. Another crew was exhausted. Another argument had broken out over ration shares. Each problem added weight to his shoulders. The alien observers noticed these details, but they misunderstood them. They saw repairs done with poor tools and called it desperation. They saw people helping each other and called it instinct. They saw arguments and called it proof of weakness. One observer noted that humans showed no clear pattern. Another replied that disorder always came before collapse. They agreed the outcome was already decided. One night cycle, Galactica's engines dropped to low power. Alarms echoed through the ship. The fleet slowed, drifting closer together. Panic spread fast. Some civilians cried. Others shouted. A few prayed. Hayes did not raise his voice. He gave short, clear orders. Power was rerouted. Non-essential systems went dark. Mark Lewis worked without stopping, burning his hands on hot metal. When the engine stabilized, cheers echoed through several decks. The alien observers adjusted their records. Temporary recovery, one marked. Emotional response. No strategic value. But something did not fit. The humans did not scatter. They did not abandon weaker ships. When one freighter lagged behind, two others slowed to match its speed. When fuel ran low on a liner, another ship shared what little it had. No one ordered them to do this. They simply chose to. Hayes noticed these choices. He said little, but inside they gave him strength. He knew rules alone could not save them. Only people could. During a quiet moment, Hayes walked through the ship. He passed children drawing pictures of planets they had never seen. He passed pilots sleeping in hallways between shifts. He passed cooks stretching food so everyone could eat. None of this appeared in alien charts. The observers watched from the dark and tried to understand. Why did humans not give up? According to the data, humans should be divided by fear. Yet fear did not stop them. It pushed them closer together. Loss did not make them silent. It made them speak, remember, and act. One observer suggested that humans were delaying the inevitable. Another said the delay itself was unusual. As Galactica jumped to another unknown system, the alien records marked a note of uncertainty. The models still predicted collapse, but the timing no longer matched. Commander Hayes stood once more at the command station. The stars shifted around the ship as the jump ended. Ahead was darkness, danger, and no promise of safety. Still, the fleet was alive. Far away, the alien observers continued to watch. For the first time they did not speak with certainty. The humans were still weak, still wounded, still lost, but they had not fallen. And that, the observers realized, was something their models had not fully explained. The pressure did not arrive all at once. It came slowly like a tightening grip. Small failures began to appear across the fleet. Navigation errors showed up on screens for only a second, then vanished. Fuel readings shifted without reason. Communication signals broke at the worst moments. To the humans it felt like bad luck. To the alien observers, it was a controlled test. Silent probes moved through the dark, far beyond human sight. They sent weak signals just strong enough to confuse sensors and delay systems. The goal was simple. Panic would grow. Order would fail. Humans would turn on each other. At first, the fleet tried to ignore the problems. Then the shortages worsened. Food shipments arrived late. Water recyclers broke down more often. Spare parts became rare. Every ship sent the same message to Galactica. They needed help and there was not enough help to give. Arguments followed. On one transport ship, civilians shouted over ration lines. Accusations flew fast. Some claimed officers were hiding supplies. Others blamed refugees from different colonies. Old divisions returned, sharp and painful. Commander Robert Hayes listened to the reports with a heavy heart. He knew fear could spread faster than any enemy. He ordered calm messages sent across the fleet, but words alone could not fill empty stomachs. Down in the engine levels of Galactica, Mark Lewis worked through the noise and heat. A cooling system had failed again and without it half the ship would lose power. The tools he used were old. Some were cracked. Some barely worked. He did not stop. His hands were stained with oil. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. When another engineer offered to take over, Mark shook his head. "Fix one more line," he said. "Then rest." The other engineer did not argue. He stayed and worked beside him. In the medical bay, Anna Brown faced a different kind of pressure. More people arrived every hour. Some were sick from stress. Others were injured in fights that had broken out over food or space. She treated them all the same. She cleaned wounds. She gave water when medicine ran out. She spoke calmly even when patients shouted at her. She did not ask where they came from or what side they were on. To Anna they were all human. The alien observers watched these moments closely. They saw arguments and marked them as expected. They saw raised voices and fear and nodded in agreement. This was how collapse began. Then they saw something else. When a fight broke out in the ration line, 3 strangers stepped between the angry men. No weapons were drawn. No orders were given. The fight ended with shame, not blood. When a ship lost power completely, nearby vessels adjusted their course to shield it from drifting debris. This slowed the entire fleet. It cost fuel. No one complained. The observers recorded the data. Cooperation noted, one wrote. Short-term survival response, another replied. It will fade. The probes increased their interference. A navigation error sent one ship off course. Panic hit fast. People screamed that the fleet was breaking apart. For several minutes, no one knew if the ship would be lost. Mark Lewis rerouted power to boost long-range sensors. The system overheated, but it worked. The lost ship was found and guided back. Cheers echoed through the fleet. The alien observers paused. This was not supposed to happen so smoothly. On Galactica, Hayes gathered his senior staff. He did not speak of aliens. He spoke of reality. "We are under strain," he said. "We cannot stop that. But we can decide how we face it." He loosened some rules. He allowed crews to solve problems without waiting for approval. He trusted people to act. The observers saw this and marked it as weakness. Loss of centralized control, they noted. System instability increasing. But the humans felt something different. People began to help without being asked. Engineers shared parts across ships. Medics trained volunteers. Teachers ran small classes for children to keep them calm. Stories were told at night, not to forget fear but to live with it. Anna Brown collapsed into a chair after a long shift. Her hands shook. She had done all she could. Mark Lewis brought her a cup of recycled water. It was barely warm. "Still breathing," he said with a tired smile. She laughed softly. "That counts." The aliens watched that moment. They did not understand why it mattered. From their view, humans were still weak. Their ships were failing. Their bodies were fragile. Their emotions unstable. Yet the expected breaking point did not come. Instead of panic spreading faster, it slowed. Fear remained, but it did not control everything. People argued, yes, but then they worked together. They complained, but then they shared. The probes sent stronger signals. A system failure shut down life support in part of a transport ship. Alarms screamed. People rushed through corridors. Within minutes, volunteers from other ships docked to help. Portable air units were shared. No one waited for permission. The observers argued among themselves. This response exceeds survival norms, one said. Temporary, another replied. They are still near collapse. But the records were becoming messy. Predictions failed again and again. Timelines shifted. On Galactica, Hayes stood alone and watched the fleet drift through the stars. He did not know why things kept going. He only knew they had to. Behind the curtain of space, the alien observers continued their test. Pressure increased. Systems failed. Shortages grew worse. Still, the humans endured. The observers dismissed it as instinct, as habit, as delay. They did not yet understand that what they were seeing was not survival alone. It was will. The battle began without warning. One moment, the fleet drifted in quiet space. The next, alarms screamed across Galactica. Red lights flashed. Enemy signals flooded the screens. The silence of space broke into chaos. Commander Robert Hayes was thrown against his console as the ship shook. A heavy hit struck Galactica's side. Metal groaned. Systems failed all at once. Communication lines went dark, one after another. Damage reports. Hayes shouted. No clear answer came back. Across the fleet, ships scattered. Some engines failed. Others spun out of formation. Smoke filled corridors. Fires burned in closed sections. The fleet had trained for battle, but not like this. Far away, hidden from human sight, alien observers watched closely. This was the moment they had predicted. A single strong shock, applied at the right time, would shatter what little order remained. Their probes had guided the enemy forces. The timing was perfect. On the flight deck, pilots ran to their fighters. Orders were unclear. Some channels were dead. Others repeated the same broken message again and again. Launch anyway, someone shouted. Fighters screamed into space, not in neat groups but in scattered lines. Pilots made choices in seconds. There was no time to wait. Daniel Carter sat in the cockpit of his damaged fighter. One control panel flickered. His targeting system was half blind. He tried to reach command. Nothing. He took a breath and looked at the stars. Nearby, a civilian transport ship drifted, its engines failing. Enemy fire cut close to its hull. It carried hundreds of people. Children. Families. No weapons. No shields. Daniel saw it before anyone else did. His fighter was low on fuel. If he moved to defend the transport, he would be exposed. No backup. No clear escape. He did not hesitate. Daniel pushed his engines hard and flew between the transport and the enemy ships. He fired everything he had, not to destroy but to distract. Bright flashes filled space. Enemy sensors turned toward him. His fighter shook under return fire. On Galactica, Hayes finally received a broken update. A pilot was out of position. A transport was exposed. Pull him back, someone said. But there was no way to reach Daniel. Around the fleet, similar choices were being made. A pilot veered off course to cover a damaged tanker. Another flew too close to an enemy ship to draw fire away from a liner. Crews acted without orders, guided only by what they saw and who needed help. The alien observers grew quiet. This was not how it was supposed to happen. According to their models, loss of command should cause confusion, then retreat, then collapse. Instead, humans acted faster. Not together by rule, but together by instinct. Daniel's fighter took a direct hit. Warning lights exploded across his display. His left engine failed. He fought the controls, teeth clenched. He did not turn away. He stayed between the enemy and the transport until the transport's engines restarted. Slowly, painfully, the ship began to move. Only then did Daniel pull back. He did not make it far. His fighter lost power and spun. Space went silent. For a long second there was nothing but stars. Then a grappling beam locked onto his ship. Another fighter had stayed behind. The two ships drifted together as they were pulled toward Galactica. The observers recorded this moment with rising confusion. Pilot behavior inefficient, one noted. But outcome successful, another replied. The battle dragged on. Galactica took more damage, but it did not fall. Fires were contained. Breaches were sealed. People fought and worked side by side. In the medical bay, Anna Brown treated wounded pilots as fast as they arrived. Blood stained the floor. Her hands shook, but she did not stop. When medicine ran out, she used pressure and calm words. Mark Lewis worked deep in the ship, restoring power where he could. He rerouted systems that should not have been connected. Some failed. Some worked just long enough. That was enough. Slowly the enemy forces pulled back. Not defeated but confused. Their attack had not ended the fleet. It had hardened it. The observers argued. This should not be possible, one said. Human units are acting independently, another replied. Command failure should reduce effectiveness. But it increased response speed, a third observed. The data no longer agreed with itself. On Galactica, Daniel Carter was pulled from his fighter. He was alive, burnt, exhausted. When Hayes finally spoke to him, he did not scold him. You broke formation, Hayes said. Daniel nodded. Yes, sir. Hayes looked at the damage reports, at the number of lives saved. Then he nodded once. Good choice. The alien observers froze that moment in their records. Leadership approval of rule-breaking behavior. This was wrong. This was dangerous. As the fleet regrouped, broken but alive, the observers updated their models again. The predictions shifted. Collapse was delayed. Outcomes split into uncertain paths. Human behavior no longer fit clean lines. They did not flee when command failed. They did not wait when orders were unclear. They chose. And that choice, unplanned, emotional, costly, had saved hundreds. As Galactica limped forward into the dark, the observers continued to watch. For the first time their arguments grew sharp. Humans were no longer just weak survivors. They were unpredictable. And that made them far more dangerous than expected. The battle was over, but its shadow stayed. Galactica moved slowly through space, scarred and tired. Large sections were sealed off. Some decks were dark to save power. The fleet followed at a careful distance, quieter than before. Many ships were damaged. Some were gone. Loss spread through the fleet like a cold wind. Names were read aloud in small rooms. Friends stood together in silence. Pilots stared at empty bunks. Children asked why some people were not coming back. No one had easy answers. Fear was everywhere. It did not shout anymore. It whispered. Some thought the fleet would stop. Some waited for the next attack. Some believed they were already dead and just had not realized it yet. But something else began to happen. People adapted. On one transport ship, a former schoolteacher named Laura Miller gathered children in a storage bay. There were no books, no boards, no lessons planned. She taught them simple things, numbers, stories, how to fix small tools. The children listened. They felt useful. Their parents felt relief. On Galactica, civilians asked to help. At first, officers refused. Then they ran out of reasons to say no. People were trained quickly. Not perfectly. Quickly. Civilians learned how to seal hull cracks. How to pass tools. How to monitor screens. Mistakes happened, but lessons spread faster than fear. Mark Lewis worked with teams that changed every day. Some had never touched an engine before. He spoke slowly. He showed them what to do. When something broke, he did not shout. We fix it, he said. Or we learn. They did both. In the medical bay, Anna Brown trained helpers between emergencies. She showed them how to clean wounds, how to calm panicking patients, how to hold someone who was dying. Some cried afterward. Some came back anyway. The fleet did not become stronger. It became wider. Commander Robert Hayes watched these changes carefully. He knew control was slipping from his hands, but something better was growing in its place. During a meeting with senior officers, Hayes made a choice that surprised many. We can't run this fleet like before, he said. We don't have the time or the people. Decisions will be shared. Some officers protested. That will cause mistakes. Hayes nodded. Yes, but waiting will cause more. From that day, ship captains were allowed to act without approval in emergencies. Crews could suggest solutions. Pilots could change plans mid-flight if needed. The alien observers noticed this shift at once. They marked it as failure. Hierarchy weakening, one recorded. Efficiency loss expected, another replied. They ran the models again. The results were wrong. Efficiency by their measure did fall. Humans wasted time arguing. They chose slower paths to protect weaker ships. They risked fuel to rescue others. But the fleet did not break. It held together. When one ship's water system failed, others sent help without waiting. When a crew was exhausted, volunteers rotated in. People slept less but trusted more. Loyalty replaced speed. Hope replaced precision. The observers struggled to understand. Their models valued clean decisions. Clear chains of command. Maximum output with minimum waste. Humans rejected this again and again. Instead they chose to stay together. One night cycle, Hayes walked through the ship. He saw civilians repairing walls beside soldiers. He heard laughter in a dark hallway where people shared food. He saw pilots teaching children how to read star maps. These things did not win battles, but they kept people human. The observers argued. This behavior is inefficient, one said. It increases survival probability, another replied. But it defies logic, a third added. They adjusted variables. They added emotional weight. They increased chaos tolerance. Still, the predictions failed. Humans did not freeze under fear. Fear moved them. When the fleet faced a dangerous jump path, the decision was not made by one voice. Pilots, engineers, and navigators spoke together. The jump was risky. It was not optimal. It worked. The observers recorded silence for a long time after that. In the fleet, loss was still present. People still cried. Names were still remembered. But fear no longer ruled alone. Daniel Carter, still healing from the battle, helped train new pilots in simulators that barely worked. He taught them what rules could not. Watch each other, he said. Not the screen. The observers watched him too. They saw humans teaching without authority, leading without rank, choosing trust over structure. At last, a note appeared in the alien records. Human decision-making prioritizes loyalty and hope. Another observer added after a pause. Models incompatible. Galactica moved on through the stars, slow and wounded, but alive. The fleet followed, not because it was ordered to but because it chose to. The aliens continued to watch, no longer certain. What they saw was not efficient, but it endured. The watchers stopped sending signals. For a long time, the alien observers had watched every movement of the fleet. They had measured fuel use, fear, losses, and choices. They had tested humans with pressure and silence. They had expected collapse. Now their screens showed only uncertainty. The records were full of contradictions. Humans should have broken when command failed. They did not. They should have scattered when fear grew. They stayed together. They should have chosen efficiency. They chose loyalty. The observers gathered in quiet debate. Their kind valued prediction above all else. A future that could not be mapped was dangerous. One by one they reviewed the final data. The fleet was still weak. Ships were damaged. Supplies were low. Humans were tired and afraid. Yet they moved forward. Not because they were ordered to. Not because they were forced. Because they chose to. At last, a decision was made. The probes were recalled. Observation fields were shut down. The silent watchers pulled back into deep space, leaving no trace. Before sealing the records, one final classification was entered. Humanity, dangerous variable. Reason, will and choice. Not strength. Not weapons. Not technology. Choice. Far away, unaware of any of this, the Battlestar Galactica drifted through open space. The fleet followed in loose formation. Some ships limped. Some glowed with temporary repairs. Some were quiet, carrying grief inside thin walls. But they moved. On an observation deck near the side of Galactica, Emily Foster stood alone. She was not a soldier. Not an officer. Just a quiet woman who had lost her home, her job, and half her family when the colonies burned. She worked where she was needed, sometimes helping in supply rooms, sometimes watching children so parents could rest. Tonight she watched the stars. They stretched endlessly, bright and distant. Somewhere out there was danger. Somewhere out there was hope. She did not know which they would find. She rested her hand against the cold glass. Behind her, the ship hummed softly. It was a tired sound but steady. Emily thought of the people she had met since the fall. The engineer who never stopped working. The medic who never turned anyone away. The pilot who laughed even after losing friends. The commander who listened more than he spoke. None of them had promised victory. They had only promised to keep going. The fleet made a slow jump to a new system. Stars blurred and returned. Space settled again into silence. Emily smiled just a little. She did not know that somewhere far beyond sight, alien records had closed forever. She did not know that entire civilizations would later study those records and speak of humans with caution. She only knew that today they were alive. Below decks, people prepared for another hard day. Repairs continued. Training sessions started. Food was shared carefully. Names of the lost were spoken softly so they would not be forgotten. Commander Robert Hayes stood on the command deck and watched the fleet hold formation. He did not feel proud. He felt responsible. That was enough. Daniel Carter, still healing, helped guide new pilots through practice runs. He told them stories, not of glory but of mistakes that taught him when to trust others. Anna Brown cleaned her hands and sat for a moment, eyes closed, before standing up again to help the next person. Mark Lewis tightened one last bolt and moved on to the next problem, already thinking of 3 ways it might fail. None of them thought of themselves as heroes. They were just refusing to stop. In the dark between stars, the galaxy moved on as it always had. Empires rose. Others faded. Most followed rules written long before. But somewhere in that vast space, a small fleet carried something rare. Not power. Not certainty. But a species that would not surrender its choices, even when every model said it should. The alien observers were gone. The humans continued. And though Emily Foster did not know it, the way she stood there, quiet, tired, and still looking forward, had already changed how the galaxy would remember her kind.